I'm not gonna lie, I've been having some trouble sleeping lately. I've been sitting up in my room, my mind racing, but I'm not thinking about adult stuff like taxes and student loans. I'm thinking about Disney's Extreme Skate Adventure for the GameCube. Now, if you, like me, were a kid growing up in 2003, you probably have some vague recollection of this video game. It was released by Activision and Toys for Bob for the GameCube, PS2, Xbox, and the Game Boy Advance. You could play as characters from 3 different Disney worlds, Toy Story, The Lion King, and Tarzan. You could skate through these environments, Andy's Room, Pizza Planet. It was a Tony Hawk clone. It used the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4 engine. It was simplified a little more for a younger audience, but it was always a fun time. The soundtrack was killer. The game itself, the mechanics were fun. And what always interested me about the game was that in the intro, it showed you a casting call of kids being chosen as part of the Extreme Skate crew. It's been 21 years, so you might be asking, what is the Extreme Skate crew? It was a group of 10 kids who were selected by casting people from Activision, turned into a character in the video game. 2 of those kids were voted by the 10 kids to be the superstars of the group, and those kids were actually taken to E3 by limo, met Tony Hawk, given a GameCube, and had the time of their lives after already being cast in a video game to be a playable character. What I always found interesting was that I never knew what happened to any of these kids who were chosen to be in this game. And I Googled the names of the kids who were in this game. I went to Wikipedia, I went to Facebook, I went to a 2003 press release from Activision, and I actually tracked down a kid named Ryan. Obviously, he was 8 years old at the time of this game being made. He is now a grown man. He is a music manager. He is a part-time DJ, and he's a cool dude. And he opened up to me about his experience being cast in Disney's Extreme Skate Adventure. And as an aside, my first experience with this game was going to Blockbuster with my brother and renting it, and then we would play this game. We took it out pretty religiously. It was always a blast as a kid. Now, he decided to try out for this game on the off chance that he'd meet Tony Hawk, and as it turned out, not only did he meet Tony Hawk, he got sent to E3 in a limo, and he forever is a part of gaming history. So join me as I sit down with Ryan about his time in Disney Extreme Skate Adventure. I guess for you, what's the first memory that really comes to mind?
Oh, I remember waiting in line, not even knowing that I was at a skateboarding competition or anything Disney related. I thought I was going to meet Tony Hawk, so I was thrilled to go to the skate park, talk my mom into it, and then there were cameras everywhere, and I found myself in the game.
Who convinced you were going to meet? Was that advertised?
I honestly, I was probably 7 or 8 years old at the time, so I don't remember how I found out about it. Just the talk of the skate park, I guess.
Oh my God. So were you an avid skater as a young person? When did your love for skating kind of start?
Oh man, as long as I can remember, I probably started skating when I was 5 years old and put in hours every day. It slowed down later on in life, but I still skate today.
Man, and so you don't remember the moment that you decided, but I guess it wasn't a decision on your part to try out for a video game.
No, I mean, once I found out, I was stoked, but that was never the plan going in.
Oh my gosh. And even as a kid, I guess, would you describe yourself as a talented skateboarder?
At the time, no. Looking at the footage of the competition, it's embarrassing. I barely knew how to skate then, but later in life, because I was so consistent with it, I got pretty comfortable.
And I remember reading a press release, which is one of the few things out there to actually figure out how this process really worked. And it said that they were looking for kids with enthusiasm and charisma. Would you have described yourself as enthusiastic and charismatic?
Oh yeah, that's definitely why I won the competition. It wasn't the skating skills, it was the shouts and the big smile. I think that's what sunk me in.
And what do you remember of the competition itself and being part of that?
That was the first time I had ever worn a competition plaque with a number on it, so that was exciting. And there were so many people and the energy was so high that day that it really, I don't remember details from it, but it really was a good day in my childhood.
Man, that's so crazy. And at least in terms of, do you remember finding out you got the gig?
Yeah, no, I remember my parents told me and I was thrilled and I didn't even really know what that entailed. But I ended up getting to meet Tony Hawk. I went to the E3 show. I went up to Santa Monica Pier and they did some skateboard footage with me, and it was really cool. It felt nice to have all that attention. And, I never really wanted the spotlight, but a free GameCube, getting on a game, no kid's going to be upset.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I gotta break down all of these things you just said. What was it like meeting Tony Hawk, and how did that process work?
Oh man, that was such an important day for me. I met him at E3, and I went to the skate park that day thinking I was going to meet him there, and he was my idol at the time. I was so big into skateboarding, and back in the early 2000s, he was a legend. I mean, he still is, but I think every kid knew that name, even if they didn't skateboard. It was probably all in like the Activision area. So I think at one point we did a photo shoot that was at that specific Disney Extreme Skate Adventure booth. And then I think I actually got to hang out with him for a little longer, probably over with one of his games. I'm sure it was Tony Hawk Extreme Skater or something like that at the time.
Mhm. I mean, obviously this is someone you admired as a young person, and somebody I still think is one of the coolest people ever.
Oh,
but as a young kid,
super
meeting
cool.
Tony Hawk.
Yeah, and because he was such an idol of mine going into it, I was really nervous, but he was really down to earth, took the time to actually make eye contact and connect with me. And especially at E3, such an overwhelming environment, it would have been natural to kind of just get swept away in the photos and the autographs. And he was a pro, not only at skateboarding, but making the time to connect with his fans. And that meant a lot to me.
Man, and going to E3, I mean, I remember I read it in the release as well that was one of the grand prizes for the quote superstars for the competition.
Oh, it was super cool. I remember taking a limo out to LA. I lived in San Diego, so it wasn't too far. And then when I got there, it was so stimulating and exciting, but I was teased by all of the game sections I couldn't go in. A lot of E3 was adult games, all the first-person shooters and other violent games. And because I wasn't even 10 yet, I couldn't go anywhere. So I just kind of window shopped, but it was still super fun.
That's so interesting. And you got a GameCube there?
No, so right when I won the competition, they sent me this giant gift basket. I don't even remember what it was in it, but it was huge. It had to have had a couple different games by Activision, a GameCube, a ton of candy, chocolate, and probably some other toys, or maybe even some skateboard stuff.
Do you still have the GameCube?
I think it's probably buried somewhere in my parents' garage. I've never been big into video games, so it wasn't something that I continued to play as I got older, but definitely got a lot of hours in when I was young.
And how long do you remember this moment in your life being? I mean, when you're a young person, I'm sure it either feels like an eternity because you've only lived 8 years.
Yeah.
How many months do you remember it being?
I'm gonna guess half a year. It's hard to remember, but from the day that I was at the skate park and then the day that I was at E3, maybe 6 months.
Mm-hmm. And again, the process of that I found interesting was that they said that all of you guys, all of the selected skaters would vote for who the superstar is, which ended up being you. Do you remember voting at all for your peers?
No, I actually remember being shy and didn't really tell my peers that I was on a competition or was going to be in a video game. I loved being a part of it. I loved that I was in the game and getting on the game, but I always kind of kept it secret from my peers. I don't really like the spotlight. So it was, young kid. It was a weird thing to talk about, but it was really cool.
Do you remember?
I kind of thought people wouldn't believe me.
Really? I'm sure you've told people, at this point in your life, if it
Oh
ever
yeah,
conversation.
no embarrassment, or it wasn't embarrassment. That's not the right word, but no nervousness around it now.
And have you seen any footage of it recently? And have you have any thoughts about, I guess, the game itself nowadays, looking back in it in retrospect?
Yeah, and since I got your email, I went through and dug online into it and looked at some videos on YouTube. I actually found a video of me at the competition. I found a video from the game intro that I'm in. And it's funny because I told my mom about it and she said, oh, it was the cutest thing. I guess they solved the way I fell. I guess I would do a little butt shake dance after I'd get up. And so they built that into my character in the game. So if you fall in the game, you see stars around his head and he does this little dance. It's great. I was definitely an animated kid.
Mm-hmm. And the soundtrack too. I mean, for me and my brother growing up renting this game at Blockbuster, I was probably this was 2003. I probably got it a year later. I was 5 maybe. So my memories of it are that soundtrack being pretty formative in terms of listening to the music. It was all very much Radio
Oh
Disney,
yeah.
Smash Mouth.
And you
But
know, looking back at it now, because music is a big part of my career today, I think that that game experience definitely influenced where I am. And kind of like how everyone loves the soundtrack in Grand Theft Auto, I feel like Disney Extreme Skate Adventure has such an underrated soundtrack. I can't remember the band's name. It might have been Big Fish, maybe Real Big
a real
Fish.
big fish, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the track, but it was like a ska
Sell out.
band, and it was super fun. And then there was another more electronic track by Basement Jacks or something.
Mhm.
And I just remember always loving when those two tracks came on in the game.
Oh my gosh. And no, like I mentioned, and like we discussed, this game definitely has a bit of a cult following of like people who grew up playing it, and I see these reviews on YouTube, people looking back at it and playing it now. I mean, it does have the same game engine as Pro Skater 4, Tony Hawk. So obviously,
Oh, wow.
it's fun. Even looking back. So what's it like to see those types of videos when you look back at people playing this game or even playing a video game as you?
Oh man, it's such a surreal experience seeing yourself in a video game. It's not something I ever imagined would happen in my life, especially because I'm not actively seeking that out. But to have that and, in my storybook, it's great.
I do want to ask you too. Obviously, I've seen like your DJ work as Love Sponge. What would you say your day to day is like with this DJ gig?
Well, DJing for me doesn't take up a huge amount of my time. It's definitely a huge passion of mine, but it's not necessarily a career.